welcome to the channel, back again with another video. This time I want to discuss something that's been on my mind since the R-60M became available on the Mig-23M and the Mig-27M. Now these two Russian aircraft at the moment are the only ones equipped with all-aspect missiles in the game. With the addition of the R-23T, Russia now has two all-aspect missile choices. But why is my question? Now this isn't gonna be a salty rant, just some observations. I play Russia quite a bit and I have nearly all of the Russian ground, helicopter, and aviation tech trees completed. So why has Gaijin only seen fit to give all-aspect missiles to Russia? And under what circumstances will other nations finally get their all-aspect equivalents? And what are the alternatives for the other nations? Now the AIM-9L is already in the game, but right now it's only for helicopters. The H-1Z and the H-64A Apache have it. The AIM-92 Stinger is in the game, but that's only for helicopters, and the only fixed wing application for that is for drones anyway, and drones are not in the game. In my opinion, the only nation that has something that comes even close to a true all-aspect missile is Britain with the SRAM, and although it's extremely capable at short range, it isn't a true all-aspect missile, and it's highly susceptible to flares. So what's going on here? Why are the only planes to get to carry all-aspect missiles are the MiG-23s and the MiG-27? For this answer, let's look deeper into the MiG-23's history. While the MiG-23M and MLD have the edge over obsolete aircraft like the F-4E because it doesn't have a look-down radar or all-aspect missiles, in actuality the MiG-23 was not that good in real life against its real contemporaries. Indeed, in real life, the F-4E did not compete directly against the MiG-23M. By 1972, the MiG-23M would have been competing at a minimum against upgraded F-4J or F-4Ss in US Navy service, with the F-14 rapidly approaching initial operational capability and coming online fully by 1974. Now I know there were still plenty of older F-4s still around in US Navy and US Air Force service as the US was winding down the Vietnam War. But the next generation of fighters were well in development, and any conflict with Russia would have accelerated their deployments. For example, by 1976, F-15As were already replacing F-4s and frontline US Air Force fighter wings. But there could have been a small window where obsolete F-4Es could have met MiG-23s. By the time the Mig-23MLD appeared, which was the most advanced version of the MiG-23 in Russian service, it was already facing the F-14 Tomcat, the F-15 Eagle, the F-16 Falcon, and upgraded F-4s from West Germany. Now as I was researching this video, I came across an article by the National Interest. I'll put a link in the description, but it was titled Russia's MiG-23, the worst fighter jet of all time. Now the author, Mark Episkopos, states that the MiG-23 was supposed to be better than the MiG-21, but it never lived up to the hype. It was in fact worse than the MiG-21 in many areas and was severely outclassed by aircraft such as the F-14, F-15, F-16, the JA-37 Viggen, and the Mirage 2000, just to name a few. Pulling from the article more, it stated that the MiG-23 performed terribly against Iranian F-14s and F-14s in the Iran-Iraq War. Interesting enough, in the Libyan-Egyptian War, the MiG-23 was routinely defeated by Egyptian Air Force MiG-21s, an aircraft it was supposed to replace and had a qualitative lead over. The MiG-23 also had a poor combat record in the Arab-Israeli wars. Famously, Libyan MiG-23s suffered defeats against the US Navy F-14s in skirmishes throughout the 1980s in the Gulf of Sidra. The MiG-23 ended up being retired from service more rapidly than the MiG-21 because of its deficiencies. So I think I answered the first question. Both MiG-23s and War Thunder are facing obsolete US fighters right now in the game. And all nations versus Russia are being artificially held back for balance and have not received their all-aspect missiles because the MiG-23 is a poor aircraft. In fact, I remember when the MiG-23 was buffed with the R-60M specifically because of its bad performance in the game. The next aircraft for Russia is the MiG-29 Fulcrum, designed in response to more advanced Western fighters. The Fulcrum incorporated all the lessons learned and was a quantum leap ahead of the MiG-23MLD. So this leads me to my next question. Under what circumstances will other nations finally get their all-aspect equivalents? I think I may have already indirectly answered this. As Russia is one of the more popular tech trees in War Thunder, the MiG-23 from Gaijin's perspective must remain relatively balanced against the other popular nations to keep those players engaged. In my opinion, this means that the Russian aviation tech tree is the bellwether line for other nations. No one else is getting anything that qualitatively outmatches Russia on a massive scale. You can tell this by the way another MiG-23 showed up so soon. I mean, the MLD came really fast. They already had the M. So therefore, other nations will start getting their all-aspect missiles once Russia is able to keep up technologically, which timeline-wise isn't until around when they get the MiG-29s. Now, I could be wrong here, but you can see this trend repeatedly around other parts of the Russian tech tree. Now, I know many of you may not play ground, but here's a good example. Remember when the Leopard 2A6 and the T-90A were added? The T-90A was very disappointing. So new rounds were quickly added to the Russian top-tier tanks to compensate for the lackluster performance. And then the T-80 BVM was rushed in to further stop the bleeding. So finally, I'll get to my last question here, and that's, what are the alternatives for the other nations? So of course the AIM-9L all-aspect Sidewinder should be implemented as soon as feasible or when balance permits. This missile first began being delivered to frontline aircraft in 1976. Historically, the Mig-23M and the Mig-23MLD could be encountering the AIM-9L on frontline Western fighters right now. The RB-74, which is the Swedish version of the AIM-9L, could also be in the game right now on both Viggens that we have. The next all-aspect Sidewinder that could appear in the game is the AIM-9M, and it has even better performance than the Lima due to its enhanced infrared countermeasures, meaning it can better discriminate between flare countermeasures and the target aircraft. Another spicy possibility could be the Python 3 all-aspect air-to-air missile. Besides Israeli aircraft, this missile also equipped the aircraft of many other nations. You can find the Python 3 on the Ecuadorian Mirage F1, which could be interesting whenever that plane comes to the game, which should be soon in my opinion. This missile was introduced in the early 80s. China also took interest in the Python 3 and produced a license-built version called the PLE. This missile could be equipped to the Shenyang JE, which is probably coming soon as well. Rounding out the missile timeline for China could be the PL-5E, which was another all-aspect missile. Next is the Japanese AAM-3 or Type 90 air-to-air missile. This all-aspect missile can be equipped to the F-4EJ Kai. Finally, the last missile I'll mention is the Matra Magic 2. This was introduced in 1986, so it's a fairly modern missile. It may be a little bit too strong for what's in the game right now. But Gaijin can always do whatever they want to do. In this last groundbreaking update, they made many of the top tier missiles more sensitive to flares. So you never know. We could get the Magic 2 and they could just tweak it themselves. But that's the video for today. Please drop a like, it really helps the channel out and gets videos like this out there. And even consider subscribing. But really, thanks again, and I'll see you in a future video.